There's Paul McStay. Paul McStay with the open goal. 21 minutes into the second half. The Celtic end goes wild.
And they gave us James McRory and Paul McStay. They gave us Johnston, Tully, Murdoch, Gold and Hay. And most of the football greats have passed through Parkhead's gates. But to play football the Glasgow Celtic way. And they played football the Glasgow Celtic way.
Hello and welcome to the Celtic Ray podcast. I am your host Stephen Ray, and again this week I'm joined by my new friend, I would say, is Kevin McColgan, my podcast mate. That's for sure. How you doing, Kevin?
Well, my podcast friend, how you doing? I'm absolutely fine. I just watched that Scotland game there, to be fair.
Yeah.
So.
Normally we record on a Thursday, but I have been absolutely floored this week with, I don't think it's COVID. I've had this before. I kind of get it once a year, and my wife says I'm the worst patient in the world, and I probably agree with her, to be honest.
So it's man flu then, basically?
Basically I've got man flu. I had Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday off work. Monday was a bank holiday for me just because of the company I work for. But then on Monday night I was feeling absolutely terrible, and I messaged my boss and just said, look, can I take the next couple of days off? I've got hundreds of holidays to use up because I've had my holidays cancelled this year. And he's like, I no bother, whatever. So but I went back to work yesterday. When I say back to work, I'm working from home at the minute. So, but I've been feeling like absolute shit. So I thought I'll hang off to the night, and then I forgot the Scotland game was on. So because we were going to record a wee bit earlier, and then I get roped in to help my wife with her work, and it's a fucking nightmare, man. But that's what it is. So I would just watch the Scotland game. What was your thoughts on that?
Not the best, but I suppose to be expected after being 10 months since the last Scotland match. A very eerie Hampden probably didn't help.
Wasn't it? I mean, the atmosphere's never the best at Hampden at the best of times, but it's just a big empty bowl, isn't it? It's
a big empty bowl where you're further away from the seats every time you go, I think. Certainly my luck with tickets anyway.
I missed the first 10 minutes. I switched on. Just had finished my McDonald's dinner. I was rock and roll night. Just finished my McDonald's, turned the telly on. I was like, fuck, the Scotland game's on. And John McGinn passes it to Ryan Christie, and he's about 35 yards out, and he blasts it out of the bar. And I'm like, oh, here we go. He's took that Celtic shooting form into Scotland as well.
I mean, Davy Provan right at the start of the match, and Christie was, at a corner, and he was and then he says, "Oh, Charlie Christie, he puts in a good cross for Celtic." And first of all, I'm thinking, no, he doesn't. If you watch the last 3 games, no, he has not. And then I'm like, Charlie Christie, what is it? And I'm just not a fan of Davy Provan. I just think he just doesn't listen or even watch Scottish football anymore.
I think that's true. You've had Charlie Nicholas come out this week, I think, basically saying, I don't understand the signing of Turnbull. I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't watched a lot of Turnbull myself, but he's been raved about in all quarters, so by people who watch a lot of Scottish football. So I'll sort of take their judgment on that, but I'm not going to take judgment if you're a guy that spends his time screaming, well, no anymore, at a TV screen this Saturday afternoon, now watching Bournemouth against Brighton. So
and he has the worst part of going. So like some downs, it's car crash material. No fun.
Really get rid of. But Scotland game, I don't want to spend too much time on Scotland, but they looked like a team that hadn't played in a long time. I think they were tidy enough. They looked tidy enough. Obviously, we've actually got some good players playing for some big clubs when you think about it. I think
right away at left back.
You could probably say McKenna at the back is playing for probably the small. Aberdeen for me is a bigger club than QPR, but if you want to put it in monetary value, QPR can afford, a lot better players than Aberdeen can. So, but Dykes just looks like
Well, first of all, he didn't look comfortable even standing for the national anthem, purely because he looked like he knew the words. So he just looked like a guy scared to say anything, as if he was bad at hymn practice in school and trying to join in when he could.
I think his parents are Scottish. I think he was born in Australia, and his kids born in Scotland. So I think him and his sister were
parents or something. Ian Crocker said. So
yeah,
that's what they said.
It was a good penalty by Christie. I don't think Forrest done a lot. McGregor gave the ball away more times than I normally see him give it away. I think the best player in the park was near Beaton, if I'm honest.
I thought Beaton had a great game. If I'm being honest, it was weird also, just to kind of deflect a wee bit from Beaton. It was weird to see El Hamid in a different position.
He was playing left a 3, I think, wasn't he?
Aye, so it was weird. I always assumed he would just be the right of the 3. But I really
he gave the ball away a couple of times, but he never really looked in danger. He had, I think he was up against Forrest, wasn't he? Forrest kind of well shackled.
Oh, Forrest! I mean, as I was saying to you earlier, I mean, he must have one of the sorest backs because he just always seems to run with a hunch in his back all the time. I'm just like, can I stand up a wee bit and try and get past up there?
As opposed to the John McGinn's Shaggy for Scooby-Doo run.
You had me looking at John McGinn for most of the game because it was getting that born. Like, does he run like Shaggy all the time?
Aye, well, that's why I sent that gif first.
Oh, it was I couldn't believe it when it came through, and I'm looking at it going, he's actually got a point, So McGinn's a good player. I really have got a big opinion of him. I really like him, and I wish we did get him, but c'est la vie with that one, I suppose.
Yeah, it was a good finish for the Israeli player. I'm going to throw something to you, obviously, just while we're on the Scotland thing. McKenna, what's your thoughts on McKenna? Because he's a name that never seems to go away, and I don't think he's a sort of player Celtic should spend £5 to £8 million on that Aberdeen seem to have him quoted at. But he is quick. I think he's pretty rapid. I think for a centre half, he's quite aggressive. Probably not the best for passing and stuff like that. But what's your thoughts on McKenna?
Personally, I wouldn't have him. I've never been a fan of him. I watched that Scotland game tonight, and within the first 10 minutes, yes, he did clear the ball a good 3 times out of 3 in the first 10 minutes, but there was times where you think you could have taken your time instead of just blasting that ball 40 yards to Mount Florida, instead of actually taking your time when there was passes on. I just think he rushes everything. There could be times where he could slow down and just take a breath and calm down with it. I personally wouldn't be paying the money that Aberdeen are wanting. There's no way they're going to get that, but I just think there's better options out there. Wouldn't want them.
Possibly, aye. The thing is, the Scotland back 3, only one of them was an actual centre half. You think, I know Tierney's been playing in a 3 for Arsenal, but in McTominay, he's more a sort of defensive central midfielder, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I like McTominay, but I think he kind of flatters to deceive at points for me. With McTominay, I'm just not a big fan of him, really.
Yeah.
I just think he blows hot and cold, and I think that's the same with Man United. That's just, to say my opinion, but I think with Scotland, though, you're going to be limited with your options, because I think there's always that bias of we need to include Premier League players as much as we can.
Yeah.
Instead of actually putting a player in that might do a better job.
Yeah, the Scotland look a bit toothless up front. It's been a problem position for a number of years, trying to find a decent striker. I think Griffiths, if he can get back to any kind of form, is probably their best bet. But I mean, he's 30 and there's no much coming through. We're no short of midfielders or fullbacks and stuff like that, but we're definitely centre half, and striker has just been a problem position for years for Scotland, I think. So yeah, and I mean, I'm not a big international fan. I watch World Cups and Euro Championships and stuff like that, but I've never.
It's the worst week in football for me, and I know my friend Craig will hate me for saying this because he's really big into Scotland, and fair play to him. He's a big Celtic fan too, but he really does love Scotland. But it's just, for me, it's not got the same excitement as club football.
Nah,
and it never.
I always think the economy takes a hit whenever club football stopped for international football. When you think about the amount of people that travel about the country spending money in bars and restaurants and stuff like that, when you're effectively stopping, a shitload of games because a couple couple of teams are going to play, you know, in Uzbekistan or Turkey or, you know, some far-flung place.
I mean, I think the night was like Lithuania versus Kazakhstan. Now, I don't think that's going to be a clash of the Titans, even over in Lithuania. You know, I don't think even Romanov would even watch that game over there.
Yeah.
I just think as well, like I liked it when it was like it used to be Saturday, Tuesday, and then that was it. Now it seems to be from Thursday right through to the next Tuesday. I'm just not a fan of it.
It's a 2-week international break, and it feels like, yeah, I'm not a fan. Well, I mean, I've only ever been to 2 Scotland games in my life. I went to Scotland against Argentina just before the 1990 World Cup. I was 11-year-old. Scotland beat the world champions actually 1-0, Stuart McKimmie, but Maradona was injured, so he didn't play, which was gutting. And in the last game I was at was again, I get a couple of free tickets for Scotland against Cyprus a couple of years ago, and what was it? Burke scored the winner with about 5 minutes to go.
Was that Steve Clarke's first game? If I
think it was.
Aye, that was some strike by Andy Robertson that game as well, because he just won the Champions League with Liverpool the previous week.
But that's the only 2 Scotland games I've ever been at. I used to go to Govan High School, and our PE teacher, Brian McAlinden at the time, so I'm going back to him in about 93, 94. He was the assistant head teacher for the school. He was the manager of Scotland's under-15s, so we used to get tickets for the under-15s because he used to play at Ibrox, so like a couple of games against England and stuff like that. But other than that, I've never been. Well, I like to see Scotland win, but I've never been massive. You know, it doesn't ruin my weekend. That's for sure.
I did have. I mean, as much as I do profess to hate international football, and I still do, I did have a Scotland Supporters Club membership for a couple of years when Strachan was a manager, because there was that little bit of hope that we might actually get somewhere.
You were one of my characters cutting about in a kilt and a pair of scrunchy socks and Timbies, were you?
No. That was jeans, trainers, and like enough money to get in the pub. That was it. I went to the Scotland-England game, which was a fantastic atmosphere, and I can always say I've experienced that, and that was kind of more the reason why I done it.
2 each?
I had a 2 each game, aye. And I was right behind the goal for Griffiths' 2 free kicks. Oh my God. When the second one went in, you thought, oh my God, we're actually going to beat England. But not to be, as it was.
I actually seen somebody, there's been a thing kicking about on Twitter recently. People have been putting up like still pictures, like football moments, you know. I think it's like fuck
limbs or something.
I think it's like fuck it, I'm, you know, but there was a still picture of Stuart Armstrong with, you know, as we're breaking away, we're 2-1 up and we're in injury time, and he makes that pass to the right instead of the left, and then obviously England score the equaliser. I mean, that was a killer.
That still gets brought up in our group chat to this day. Why didn't he just bloater it to Mount Florida? You know,
if I was Lee Griffiths, I'd probably have never spoke to him ever again, to be honest.
Because pulled it right back for the dead, and then
I mean, I know the goals will always sort of be remembered, but I think it loses a slight bit of, you know, the glamour just because we fucked it up right at the death. But anyway. Let's move on to Celtic. So, how are you feeling after, you know, we're now a week and a bit out of the Champions League? Are you calmed down any?
Well, I suppose I better calm down, or else I'll never be allowed back in Parkhead again. I think with the way I was feeling after that. But
I was pretty raging because it was one of the fears that I had about Lennon getting the job, and this isn't, you know. This isn't one of these being smart after the event. I'm sure there's tweets in there when at the time when it was people were arguing for Lennon to get the job full time. Obviously, this was sort of that period when he just took off Brendan Rodgers. I said at the time, you know, he's the right man to see us through to the end of the season, but I don't think he's the right man long term. Mm-hmm. And I questioned these, and people would always bring up Barcelona and that Champions League where we got to the last 16, but he had 3 pretty ordinary seasons, pretty poor seasons actually in Europe, either side of them. And I mean, there was the first 2 seasons he went out of he didn't even make the group stages. He actually only got into the group stages of the Europa League through a Sion getting kicked out. So I've always had that kind of, I don't know.
He's always had luck on his side, I think, and I think that played a major part in the Barcelona victory, because with any manager would have needed to have one big slice of luck, especially when you have 11% possession compared to 89% that Barcelona had that night. But the things as well within that the thing in Lennon, I'm still dubious about, should we get there again, is we seem to have a Hampden phobia with Lennon. We always seem to have not the best of games, especially in his first time there.
I mean, people will argue that the last 2 times he's been there, he's picked up, or the last 2 cup finals he's been to, he's picked up the trophy. So I'm not going to bleat on about it. I mean, he's in the job. I made the comment last week that when somebody asked me if I was Peter Lawwell, would I have sacked Lennon? Obviously, I said I would have at the time, but he's not going to. Let's be realistic. I'm not Peter Lawwell, and Peter Lawwell's not going to sack Lennon. I think he would have to have a run of games without winning in the league before he'll do that. I think Europe. I mean, obviously, the draw's been made for the next round of the Europa League, and we're up against a couple of smallish teams that we should be able to breeze past. But obviously, it's the round after that, and I think if he doesn't make the group stages of the Europa League, because as far as I'm aware, the club does bank on European group football, i.e. Europa League. I think the Champions League is seen as a bonus. Mm-hmm. So I think if he fails to make the Europa League, I think the pressure will absolutely mount on him. And I'm not trying to, this isn't me sitting on a Celtic podcast thinking I know best and wanting the manager sacked and wanting him to fail. I don't. I absolutely want Celtic in Europe this season, regardless of what else we're going for, because for me, it helps you keep your best players. It helps you attract players for the next windows if you're doing well in Europe. If nobody's come to Scotland just for domestic football of any quality, that's for sure. No, I don't think anyway.
No chance. I mean, it would be a huge failure on his KPI should he not get to European football. Because let's face it, European nights at Parkhead are unrivaled certainly when we are in the winning side.
Yeah.
But I think if it would need a huge calamity in the league before Mr. Law would sack him.
Yeah, that's for sure. But in the short term, obviously the next game was against Motherwell, and when the team lineup came out, were you raging or did you just laugh?
A bit of half expecting it and just thought, here we go. Let's just see how it goes. But it's as if it's just to prove that it wasn't the side that it wasn't the lineup that was the cause of the bad result against Ferencváros. It was just that was just to say, yeah, I'll pick this team again just to prove you's wrong, you buggers.
This is what annoys me about. This isn't a Neil Lennon thing. This is a football manager thing. Some, not all, but some have this stubborn streak in them. Mm-hmm. And Lennon's got two negative parts of what I've always hated about. No, hated is a strong word. What I always disliked about Martin O'Neill and Gordon Strachan. There was one thing that each of them did. One, that Martin O'Neill was too much reliant on tried and trusted. Even though he maybe sign a player, if they didn't do it for him within a game or two, they were out. And somebody who wasn't necessarily in form would just come back in because he'd done it for him before. We pretty much had the same team play. There was a core of about 8 or 9 players for about 4 years who were just consistently playing. Mm-hmm. And eventually they ran out of steam and lost the league at Motherwell. But and the other part is the Strachan side, where the people or the fans or the people sitting at home, drinking a can of Kestrel, phoning into Super Scoreboard, as he put it, the guys that have never played the game, he doubled down on opinions. So if Celtic maybe lose to, I think there was a game we lost to Hibs 2-0. And he came out after the game. He's like, I thought we were brilliant. I thought we created more chances here than we've ever created here before. And I'm like, don't lie. Don't treat us like fucking idiots. No. I've watched probably more football matches than Neil Lennon's ever watched because he's been playing in them. I mean, for every one game he's played on a Saturday, I've probably watched about 7 or 8 matches that weekend, and that's been me my whole life. But that doesn't make me a football manager, but I'd like to think I've got a fair idea what I'm watching and what I'm talking about. And for him to come out and pick that same team and then afterwards say it was nothing about ego, it was, he always does what he thinks. He doubled down. And I just wish he would have came out and said, do you know what? I wanted to give the team a second chance. I thought they played well enough. Mistakes cost us, but I think we should have won the game. We didn't win the game, but I wanted to give these guys a chance to redeem. See if they just come out and be honest. People will go, right, okay, that's fine.
Because he definitely backtracked in that Friday press conference. You could definitely tell that. And
That was embarrassing.
I think someone's definitely had a word with him saying, you better backtrack that right away. And I think that's maybe lower hierarchies went, like, what are you playing at there? And that's another bad thing about Lennon. There's that emotional side of Lennon that has got better, but that it's still
It's sneaked out a wee bit, doesn't
it? It's kind of creeping back in, and I think if, God forbid, and we don't want it to happen, but see if we were to go on a bad run, I think it could creep out further and further and further.
Yeah. Well, I'd sorry to cut you off. I'd listen to Super Scoreboard on Friday in particular, and Hugh Keevins was on, and he's a staunch defender in Neil Lennon, and that's fine. That's his prerogative and whatever. And I mean, I hear there's a few people have messaged me privately and said that Lennon feeds Keevins stories. I don't know if that's true, to be honest. I think it might be bullshit, but Lennon will never get any flack because Keevins was going through in the houses of who's ought to blame, recruitment, the players, but he never once came out and blamed Neil Lennon, and I'm like, if this, I remember when we went out to Malmo, we were on a dialer for the second season in a row. We dropped out the Champions League into the Europa League, and it was a dead. I think Keevins called him a dead man walking. No, I don't know if that's a phrase that I would want to use, but he just refused to criticise Neil Lennon at all. And you praise the people when they do well, but you've got to fucking pin them to the wall when they make a mistake. And it was a mistake. The mistake was the lineup was a mistake on the Wednesday night, and again, judging by the performance against Motherwell in the first half, it was an absolute mistake that he got away with because he's pure genius for Callum McGregor and then James Forrest. Because I don't think there's much to talk about before that, to be honest.
I mean, it's basically a carbon copy of the Ferencváros game. It's a shaky start. We're a wee bit all over the place. And I hate to say this again, and people might be getting sick of it on the podcast, but Brown looked all over the place again against a Motherwell team who hadn't won, I think, in any of the previous games, unless I'm mistaken. And
I think they've only got 2 points.
He was pushed off the ball a couple of times in the first 5 minutes, and
then he get booked after about 20 odd minutes.
And
because the guy was past him, and he had
exactly
nothing. He had nothing but to bring it. All he could do was bring him down.
But as you say though, what a run by Kalmack for the goal. I mean, he took on about 4 or 5 players, and then a great pass to Forrest, and then I must admit I thought it was going wide, the way the ball kind of swerved at the last minute. But a great strike. But
I tweeted what a goal, and somebody tweeted me saying it took a deflection, and then because it flashed up on my phone, and I thought, never fucking took a deflection, and then when I went to read it, the person had obviously deleted it because they'd obviously seen the replay that it didn't take a deflection.
It was weird because my dad sits in the Disabled Supporters Association, so he gets the game commentated to him normally. As a Clark kid, but they were trying a new thing, and they were trying to get it. So they were trying to do the game through Facebook Messenger, and it worked relatively well. But I think the feed that he was listening to was 30 seconds quicker than the feed we were actually watching. So he knew that Celtic had scored, but he was keeping his mouth shut, so fair play to him. He wasn't spoiling anything. But
I'm sure Celtic tweeted somebody because they moaned that the goal, they seen the goal on Twitter, posted on the Celtic Twitter feed before it actually showed up on their TV feed on the pass. And I think they responded basically saying stay off Twitter.
Well, to be fair, it's a good point. It's a good point because you shouldn't be on Twitter if you're watching the game, But at the same time, I think we're all guilty of, having a wee quick look to see what people are saying, You
can always tell when a game's shite. You start spending more time looking at your phone than you do looking at the actual game. I've tried to get into the habit. I put my phone on charge in the kitchen out the way when a game's on, so I'm not distracted.
It's weird because you do get very easily distracted by it, or else you're in the group chat and right away my mate Craig will be saying, oh, this is terrible, this is lackluster, this is this, and then I'm just like, no, I'm going to stay away from it till half time, and whatever I miss, because you're there to watch the game. That's the way I see it, or it's different when you're at the game, but it's different when you're watching it here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've pretty much slated Neil Lennon for the team selection again. There's no hiding place. But, credit where credit is due. He made the change at half time. I don't know if El Yunusi was necessarily the right change at the time. Personally, and it's not to pick on Brown, but I don't think he was offering a hell of a lot.
I was glad to see Kamala come on. I was glad to see him on.
We needed a striker on. And obviously the jury is out, and I'm not convinced that he's worth what we've paid for him and if he's ever going to make it as a Celtic player. But what you can say is he plays like a striker and he knows what a striker should be doing. Now, whether he's got a great first touch or if he's a great finisher, we've really yet to see. But the game completely changed.
Exactly. Exactly, because in the first half, in the first 40 seconds, he made 2 runs behind that defence, which had not happened at all in the first half. And as you say, that's what a striker should be doing, and that's the difference it can be when you're putting the crosses into the box. If there's no striker, it's not going to go anywhere. If there is a striker who's making the sort of runs like Klamala was, then, it does make a difference, and it did look a wee bit more attacking, a wee bit more intent in the play, a wee bit more fluid, if nothing else.
He had a chance, ball right to the byline. I've only seen the replay once from behind the goal. The keeper gets a touch on it, I think. He
does. I've checked it a couple of times. He does get a touch on it.
I mean, I suppose it's, the touch is less than a yard away if he were I've heard the argument he should have been more on his toes and kind of, expecting it. It's hard to judge. I mean, it was one that he could have scored, probably should have scored, but I'm not going to hold it against him. And then obviously he does well. The pressures the Motherwell player who I think he slipped actually, and then he's sort of busting through in goal, but he just never looked confident. He never looked like, he didn't look like a guy who was going to bury that.
If that's Edward, that's in. All day.
I mean, I think he Edward in the cup final against Hearts, where as soon as you see the run and as soon as you see the balls going through 1-on-1, it's a goal before he's even took the shot. Whereas
if you watch that goal back, he's expecting that run. He's expecting that ball to be hit to him, in the off chance it comes round to him in the cup final. And as you say, he's going to score.
Formala's chance reminded me of... his chance reminded me a wee bit of the Griffiths 1-on-1 against Ajax in the Europa League a few years back. I think that one actually came for a brilliant pass for Scott Allen, but the point was he's clean through on goal, 1-on-1, right in the middle, and he's trying to slide it sort of close by the goalkeeper, and the keeper sort of stuck a leg out and saved it. I'm not going to hammer the guy for missing a 1-1 because Lee Griffiths, that's definitely one of his weakest parts of his game, is when he's got time to think and he's running clean on goal. He probably scores 1 and 3 out of them, to be honest. I've just made that stat up, by the way, if anybody's listening in, just in case Juco James wants to jump over me.
I'll be checking tonight, don't worry about that. No, I mean, the thing is, at least Klamala, and I might get slated for this in the but at least he tries.
Don't worry about getting slated. When you come on these things, you just have to say what you think. No, everybody's ever going to agree, and I think that's what makes a good pod, is people just being honest but without being fucking hysterical.
Yeah. He does try, Kamala. He might never be the player that we're wanting or the player that's worth $3.5 million, but he did make a difference when he came on, and that's what he was there to do. So you've got to give Lennon credit for that. But what I would come back to is, people were saying, oh, what a goal by Forrest. Look at all the Forrest haters. What did they actually do after the goal? Really?
Yeah. Well, Frimpong came on the right-hand side, and he was excellent, to be fair.
I thought he was fantastic when he came on. I mean, he was taking... I can't remember the guy that he was up against, and I think it's not Gillespie.
I didn't bother myself to attempt to learn any of the Motherwell players, to be honest.
He was getting the better of him every single time, and I think he got a booking on the back of it, the Motherwell player, and it was just great to see the old Frimpong coming back, like when that first game against Ross County, where he was just taking players in and out and taking the absolute piss out of them. It was great to see that. And I think
he's a wing back, isn't he? More than a full back.
he's got to be. I think he's got to be part of the 5 in the 3-5-2. That's where I think.
Where does that leave? Where does that leave Forrest then?
Well, I maybe would drop Forrest for a couple of games, just to see how it goes. I mean, if you're going to start with no striker, then what's left to not start with Forrest, But then, will that ever happen? Because Lennon is a big fan of Forrest, and that's his favourite. So.
Well, although he did drop him against Dundee United and put Christie out there, didn't he?
He did, but then he brought Forrest on and played him out in the left, which was stupid, Yeah. He done nothing in the left, and then the one chance that Forrest did have was on the right hand side. Fun of that,
It's going to be interesting moving forward, regards to the formation, because as soon as he switched formation in that second half, put a striker on, it was a completely different game, and then obviously Ayeti comes on, and I think he's played less than 40 minutes for Celtic, and he's got 2 goals already.
Right place, right time, and it's a typical striker's goal, and a great strike at that.
Well, I didn't know it was a goal because as the pass went in for Ayer, and then he's took a touch and he's absolutely rattled it. My screen froze as the ball was pretty much on the line.
God almighty, that's the worst.
I was absolutely raging. I think I caught the just at the tail end of the last replay, where by the time it kicked back in again.
It was your Celtic Twitter ahead or behind. That's the main story. That's the main talking point.
Well, I wasn't watching it on an official channel, so I wasn't going to complain about it, to be fair.
To be fair, I mean, if that's a half fit Ayeti getting goals like that, I can't wait to see a fully fit Ayeti.
Yeah.
Because I think he is going to get us some very important goals. And that sort of strike is what you're wanting to do. In the box, almost Hooper-esque, I would say. Because that's what Hooper was doing. In the box, right time, right place, goal.
He looks like a guy that's going to play sort of between 0 to 30 yards in between the posts. You're not going to get. I don't think you're going to get massive work rate out of him necessarily. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I've never really watched him, but just for what I've seen so far, and obviously he must be carrying an injury because he's got strapping on his leg. But the way he took that touch and absolutely buried it, he could have put in some bleep tests. The amount of time he had on the ball,
You
can complain about the marking, but then top strikers are brilliant at finding space. So you've got to give him credit for. He just stood his ground, and the players were all moving around about him, and next thing he's standing with at least 5 yards circle around about him.
It's exactly what a striker should do, and I'm sorry, but Ryan Christie doesn't find that space. Ryan Christie just runs for you. That's all he'll do, on that position,
Aye, up front. Aye, aye. So it was a.
Kawamala
must have looked at him and thought, "Fuck you, man! You just come on."
He's a break.
Aye, but it was a brilliant finish, and then obviously we were sort of heading into the dying minutes of the game, and Julian busting forward. Somebody said it was David Trezeguet-esque, that finish.
Pretty much, it's a carbon copy of it.
Almost.
I mean, it's a strike that most strikers would have been proud of. People have been saying on Twitter that if Hernan Crespo was doing that, it'd be spoke about for weeks and weeks. I don't know why they brought up Hernan Crespo.
I don't know why Crespo.
I really don't know why, but I thought I just went, okay, whatever. But it's a cracking goal, and he does make it all by himself. Started interception, finished it off greatly, and that'll do his confidence world a good as well. Again,
I stuck a tweet out, and I was expecting a lot of kickback on it because the conversation came up again, obviously, because we're in the process. We were in the process of trying to get the Shane Duffy deal over the line, and there was a lot of, we need a guy that's not going to get bullied and whatever. But I'd actually watched some highlights of the game at Ibrox last season, the 2-0 game. Mm-hmm. And as you hear, as we're just about to break for the second goal in injury time, Chris Jullien wins a header, and the commentator actually says Jullien wins a header again. Mm-hmm. Because I remember that day, and he was absolutely colossal that day. He won everything that came into the box, and he just absolutely bullied the Rangers front line that day. They never stood a chance. And obviously, so I highlighted that game on a tweet. I highlighted the Lazio home and away, where he was outstanding. The cup final, where, Fraser Foster gets a lot of the praise, but for me, if Chris Julien's not in that team that day, we lose. Not just because he scored, but I thought he was absolutely solid as a rock that day.
It's funny you should say that, because I actually because I've still got that game recorded on my V Plus, and I put it on, and because I was thinking that I wanted to just see how Julian was, and I just watched the first half. I've not had the time to watch the second half, but as you say though,
Rangers get in for the wide areas a lot.
Aye, Julian was always that man there. If it wasn't Foster, it was Julian behind them or in front of him. Should it be? I thought he played great that game. But people, and I know we're maybe, I've maybe slated him and stuff, but yeah, he is a good defender. He is a good defender.
Well, the point I was making was that people keep bringing up the same 3 games. The 2 games against London Dykes away last season. Which one game was, it was a really poor performance. It was a really bad performance on a pretty shit pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second game, it wasn't as bad. I think it was maybe 50-50 in that game. Dykes get the better of him on some occasions and Julian get the better of Dykes on others. At the end of the day, I think Dykes scored on the night, to be fair. So, I know, and then obviously they bring up the Kilmarnock game at the start of the season, but that wasn't a game in regards to he conceded a goal because he get bullied. He conceded a goal through bad positioning and a bit of a misunderstanding between him and Brown. Brown comes in, Julian kind of takes a step back when he probably shouldn't. He should at least close the space on the line. And then the guy does a wee skillful turn and he pulls him down. It's not to do with being bullied or anything like that. And I hate the term, being bullied, because the opposite word to that means weak. It's almost as if he's saying that Julian's a weak defender. I don't think he's a weak defender at all. At the end of the day, Celtic can't afford Virgil van Dijk now. We get the players, the centre halves we get are guys who are going to be pretty good centre halves. They're going to provide some goals and whatever, but they're going to make mistakes. But they're going to make mistakes more often than Ramos, than Van Dijk. Than some of the big sort of
Delip or whoever.
Or Cellini or these guys, these absolute warrior, centre halves.
Leaders
these guys are at the biggest clubs in the world because they're the best at that position. So we're never going to get a defender with a 1 in 30, for mistakes, 1 in 30 games, where he's have a shocker. We're getting a 1 in 15, and that's where the price difference comes in. So I don't. For me, he's an upgrade on Boyata. He's an upgrade on Simunovic, and for me, he's been a great signing. I think he's got his flaws, and he's no perfect.
What defender hasn't, I mean, to me, like Ramos is a great defender, but I tell you, he's a bit of an arrogant prick for me. I just think he's such a shithouse,
I'll see that all that stuff. I love it. See all the dark art stuff, and that's why I don't get too hung up on the whole Porto thing for 2003, sorry, because if we won the Europa League or the UEFA Cup and we pulled out some of the antics in the last minutes to kill the game, kill time, I would not give one iota. I wouldn't give a shit. And I've always been a fan of the kind of Latin leagues, Spain, Italy, Argentina. I watched quite a bit of. I used to watch quite a bit of the Argentina Primera League, and some of the antics they go on it's comical at times, but it's pure dark arts. They don't see it as cheating; they just see it as cunning. And that's the. I think that was the word that Maradona used when he was doing an interview with Gary Lineker years ago. He's like, you see it, you call what you call cheating is what we call, gamesmanship or cunning or, smarts.
Gaining an advantage, but in a roundabout way,
So, yeah, we kind of went full circle there a wee bit. So, in the end, Lennon will say, well, I picked a team and we won 3-0, which is fine, but I think I don't want my managers being stubborn, and kind of giving it the fuck you to the doubters out there. Just play people in their proper position for me, and you'll win more than you'll ever lose, that's for sure, especially at Celtic. So
I hope we go to a 3-5-2 now, because I think we're more fluid that way. With it being a 4-2-3-1, okay, if it was a striker it might have been a wee bit more better, but well, it was a terrible first half apart from the goal, and I just think with a 3-5-2 we'd be so much better, and it was a bit more enjoyable, like because the last few games, let's face it, they haven't been easy to watch, and I'm not saying every game should be an easy 6-0 all the time, but it's been a bit sometimes painful viewing, and I think Ferencváros that was bad.
Well, now that because you've mentioned 3-5-2, I think I'm not a Forrest hater. I think Forrest has done really well in the last few years. I think he's actually been one of our best players by quite a distance. He's brought a lot of goals, but he's definitely off the boil a wee bit. Even with Scotland tonight, I don't think he was great. So I think if we're moving into a 3-5-2, I think Forrest might have to sit at the next few, and Frimpong get an opportunity of that. But who plays the left-hand side is going to be the argument. Now, I'm going to make a point here, and I know I'm going to get absolutely caned for it when people listen to this, but I think currently at the club, our best left wing-back is Bolingoli.
I know.
No, Bolingoli I don't think is a great defender, but I think he's actually really good going forward. And you do see him in the final third a lot, or you did see him in the final third a lot in that sort of first 3-4 months for Celtic last year. I thought he had a pretty decent start, but defensively he is shaky. But if we're playing three at the back and we need a wing back, but that's no means necessarily saying Bolly should come back into the team, because one, he's got the suspension and he's been linked with Roma tonight.
Yeah, so that's well, which I've wrote down thinking, wow, if he's been linked with Roma, we have had it.
That other team from Turkey, whose name escaped me, it's not Galatasaray. It's the team that won the league, but they're not one of the famous three, so to speak.
Oh, the ones that played Copenhagen.
Yes, them.
Başakşehir, Istanbul, yes. Başakşehir.
That's it. They've been linked to him as well, so I definitely think we need a better. I don't think that's a position for, what do you call it, Moy Elyounoussi. I don't think Elyounossi's a defensive go back the way type player. So 3-5-2 is going to create a problem for a few people in regards to who actually plays, because Moy's been playing out on the left of on the 4-2-3-1. But he's not a wing back, so I can't see him playing there. So that would mean his time would have to probably come at number 10. But is Christie going to get drop out there? Personally, I think Christie could play that role. I think he's got the energy for it. I think there was a few times a night where he was winning a lot of 50-50s challenges. I think he's actually really productive from the left-hand side. He is left-footed. It's not a 100% defender position, especially in Scotland, playing in the Scottish Premiership. So I think Christie could easily move to that position and actually be pretty good at it, I think.
I would agree with you. I mean, I think with the Bolingoli, I mean, I think, there's no way back for him, I think. But that's just my opinion on him. But I would agree on the basis that when he was that bit further up the park, he wasn't as bad as he was as a defender, shall we say.
I just think he gets into a lot of really good positions and a lot of good combination play, and I think he gets beyond that defender to get the ball into the box more than Greg Taylor does. Taylor's a really good crosser of the ball, but he can't get past that guy. If he can't get past his marker, then he's hitting that first guy every time. And that's no use to nobody. That's what Kieran Tierney was brilliant at, that sort of drop of the shoulder and that 2 or 3 yard burst of pace just to get the ball cut back.
He was good at the kind of playing the ball and then going for it, whereas like making the space, making the run, and then you pass the ball to Tierney and it was in for Dembele or Sinclair or whoever. But with Taylor, it's a pass the ball and stay still as a stone almost, instead of moving. He's very rigid, just like move, and I think once he doesn't get past a player in the first 10 minutes, his head goes down, and then he's not worth a monkeys.
But if anybody sort of think about what I mean with Tierney, look at the game we beat Rangers 5-0. I think it was Candace he was 1-on-1 with. Now Candace has got his hands behind his back for some stupid reason, but Tierney sort of stands him up and then just knocks the ball past him about 3-4 yards. But over that, he started 2 yards behind Candace and got to the ball before him and cut the ball back, and Edwards stuck it away. But the amount of times Tierney done that was incredible, and Taylor's just not got that in his game. He's a pretty solid defender, but going forward, I think he's lacking that bit of craft. I think to make it in a 3-5-2, and if Celtic go to a 3-5-2, I think Taylor's game time might be a lot more limited moving forward.
The thing with Taylor as well, and I know when Tierney came in, he wasn't exactly the most bulky, but Taylor's very, very thin and he's not bulky. He doesn't have a lot of strength, and I think that's a part of his game he could work on. I think that would help him quite a lot, because I think he's bundled off the ball quite easily. Whereas with Tierney, he certainly put it about. He wouldn't be afraid to shirk a tackle. I
was just about to say, is that your laptop overheating, or is that a plane just come into land?
It does it from time to time. It's Mr. Law and his helicopter coming to berate us for what we've said already. So
yeah.
No, it does it from time to time. So I do apologise for anybody.
No, sorry. I was listening to E-Tims a few weeks ago. They do a podcast probably about one a month, and I think he was recording next to his wife's fucking hairdryer. I messaged him and I was like, what the hell? Were you in a boiler room or something, recording?
I didn't even think it was that loud, so that just shows you. I mean, this is a brand new laptop, essentially. I got it just before lockdown as well.
The mic picks everything up, mate. So I think in the end, I think the second half performance against Motherwell was excellent. Lennon deserves credit for recognising that it just wasn't working. There's no point in sticking to your guns. You got the striker on. Kwamala done well. Kwamala scored tonight for Poland under 21s. I actually thought he was older than. I thought he was 23, 24. He's old. I think he's 22, but young enough to qualify for the under 21s. So
I think they're allowed so many over 21 players, aren't they? Just to make it up. A cracking goal. If anybody's not saw it, I've liked it on my page, so if anybody wants to have a look at it, it's a great ball and a cracking wee chip over the goalkeeper.
At WeKev1888, is that right?
That's it, that's correct. I might need to change that because I think it's need to make it a wee bit more better for people to understand.
My best mate's called Big Kev, so if I ever get him and you on the podcast, that's going to get confusing, I think.
Well, you can do it with my old work. They used to call me Kev IN, and then the other one was Big Kev, so you can just do that and just differentiate.
He's not having it. I've been trying to talk him into one of the feature pods because he's a year or so older than me, and he'd done a lot of the games in the 90s and gone on the supporters buses and got to the Celtic games in the 90s, and I'm trying to talk him into doing a pod with us, but he's a bit mic shy, I think. So, but I'll put it out there actually. If MD's, you're no old enough, I don't think.
Well, my first season was 97, 98. So,
I suppose. What age were you then?
5 years old.
Oh, yeah, that's not. That doesn't count.
But I remember the games. I remember the games. So.
I'm hoping to get some folk on it. They've got stories to tell, like away days with the buses and stuff like that. And just to get some of the madness, because I used to go in the Govan Emerald supporters bus, and I'm going to reach out to Magua, who runs the bus and the page. If MD doesn't know who Magua is, he's the guy who was allegedly punched a horse. He's I've
heard stories of the famous Magua.
Big Kevin Magua. I think he runs the Govan Emerald now, but he was always on the bus when I was going abroad and stuff like that. And I'm going to try and get him on soon because I'm sure there's going to be some stories to tell with him.
God Almighty, I think it would make my experience of Celtic like a walk in the park compared to.
But if there's anybody, I'll just put it out there. If anybody wants to get involved to sort of discuss that kind of that era, because I think it's an era that nobody's really covering on all the Celtic podcasts that are out there. And everybody's covering the successful times, but I think it's an era, as much as it was a kind of dark period in Celtic's history in regards to success, I think we had a lot of great players and we had a lot of great games and moments through that time, plus we had one of the biggest seasons in the club's history as well. So I think it's something that needs to be visited and definitely looked back on with, because without the 90s, we were not here where we are today, so to speak. We needed that we had to go through that period to rebuild a club effectively to the point where we're absolutely dominating Scottish football. Completed it, mate.
Just as a side note to that, the book by a certain Stephen O'Donnell, Fergus McCann versus David Murray, is a very, very good read. It's one of the quickest books I've ever finished, because it just focused a lot on a time where I've got a lot of interest, because as you've said, I wasn't really the oldest, so I don't really remember a lot of it, but it's a very, very good read, and I would urge anybody to buy that book.
Well, he reached out to me to sort of tweet, retweet and advertise obviously his book, which I've done, and then I asked him if he fancied coming on to talk about it, but obviously because I want to do my Remember the 90s feature, so he said he'd think about it. I'll maybe give him a wee chase up and see if it's something he wants to come on. Have you any other points? I've got some Twitter questions, but if there's anything else you want to cover off at the minute, obviously maybe the draw.
Also I've made a few notes about the two possible teams that we could face, Riga or Trifiliore, and obviously we'll start with Riga being the Latvian team, only formed 6 years ago. The furthest progression was the playoff.
So they're now the youngest team in the Europa League this season. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much. It was a bit of a weird start when I was looking, researching them, that they're only formed 6 years ago. But the furthest progression is the playoff last year, narrowly losing to Copenhagen 4-3 in aggregate, which I was quite surprised about.
That's scary.
Given the fact that what happened against Copenhagen, if we get them, there's going to be that seed of doubt in my mind if it goes wrong.
I heard they've got a few Brazilians.
Well, that's another thing as well. They've got a few certainly foreign players that may be able to cause us problems, but let's hope they don't. But it's still either going to be between them or Trifiliore from San Marino, and I think they don't hold out much hope for the San Marino team. They went out in the first round in their last 5 attempts in European football, but on the side of that, they're one of the most successful teams in San Marino.
I didn't think San Marino actually had any club teams. I just thought San Marino had a national team and that was it.
If anybody looks into it, it's a very weird setup they've got. It seems to be divided into a lot of sub-leagues. It's not just one league. It's a very, very strange setup, but somehow
the Postman League, the Policeman League, the Fireman League,
the Banker League. But as I say, they're one of the teams that are in it. But I think it's going to be Riga that we're going to be playing. It's away from home, which I'm
probably not going to pay much attention to the scoreline because the chances are they're going to rack up a few goals.
Of course.
I remember years ago, and I think it was HJK Helsinki under Lennon. The first season we made the Champions League under Lennon.
Yeah.
I think Helsinki beat a team for the Faroe Islands something like 8-0 on aggregate, and I thought, oh no. And then obviously we went 1-0 down to them at home in the first leg, and I'm like, oh definitely not. Oh no, but eventually we won 4-1 in aggregate. But I expect it to be the Latvian team in the next round. To be fair, but let's be honest, if we can't dispose of one of these teams, then it's the game's a bogey, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, I think we can kiss goodbye to any kind of targets that we have, because I tell you, you may as well just rip up the paper and start again. Because I was going to say, I think the round afterwards gets a bit more trickier because we're not seeded apparently, but the way it's working out, there's quite a lot of teams not really seeded either, and some of the seeds are teams that don't have that much points. I don't get it. It's a bit of a weird setup they've got. Apparently, sorry to butt in there. Apparently, the way it could work out is if Ferencváros lose the next game, we could meet them again.
Yeah. Is it a one-off tie again, or is it home and away in the last?
It's home and away in the playoff.
Is it in the playoff? It's home and away. Well, at least that's something.
At least it's something.
Well, Lennon can get to start 2 games with a striker.
Playing whoever from like Albania,
Well, you ever notice he's never played McGregor at left back again?
It took a European exit to sort that one out, but then it's hopefully this time, after 2 times of using a striker, it clearly doesn't work. So just do it. But anyway, we should stop talking about that and just
Well, we're a few weeks away from it because the second qualifying round still to get played. So Rangers have got the Lincoln Red Imps, so they can win the "We've never been beat by Lincoln Red Imps" trophy.
And that's their own collection, so they'll take it going for 56 instead of going for 55, probably.
Motherwell, they've got Coleraine, and then potentially I think it's Basel potentially, is it? FC Basel. But Aberdeen, my God, they got a toughie, didn't they? The Viking in Norway, and then if they get past them, they've got Sporting Lisbon away.
Away from home. I mean, what a trip that would be, because that is a fantastic stadium if nobody's ever been to it. But my God, they don't get harder than that. Admittedly, though, they have lost a great player in Fernandez, but I still think they would have enough quality to see off Aberdeen.
See, the Scottish clubs are not really going to have this issue next season because the new third competition comes in, the Europa Conference League. I don't know if anybody knows about this, but moving forward, as of next season, the Champions League will stay 32 clubs. The Europa League's reduced to 32 clubs, and there's a new third competition called the UEFA Conference League, which is again 32 clubs. So basically, the Conference League's going to have, I think, Celtic and Rangers, if providing both those clubs finish first and second, they will go into the Champions League next season, qualifiers. If we win the league, we go straight into round 3. So if we just by winning the league, we'll go one round longer next year.
We'll improve our record by one.
Rangers will, I think, go into the second qualifying round, providing obviously they finish second through the non-champions route, and then third and fourth place in Scotland goes into the Conference League. So they'll not be coming up against your Sporting Lisbons, or they'll be coming up against teams that are on a par with Scottish football, if not less than. So we should actually start to see more clubs for Scotland getting into group stages. But I
take it then, do we just avoid the Europa League then, basically, for placings?
No, the cup winners.
The cup winners. Aye.
But if the cup winners happen to be the team that are already in the Champions League, then the third place team goes into the Europa League. So we've only got one Europa League spot from the start of next season. That's not to say that we don't end up with more clubs in there by not qualifying for the Champions League. But if you finish third in the Europa League group, you'll go into So this is how it's going to work. So if you finish third in the Champions League group, obviously you used to dropped into the Europa League, and you would go into a last 32 draw. Well, that's not happening anymore. So the group winners of the Europa League will automatically qualify for the last 16. The third place in the Champions League and the second place in the Europa League groups will go into a hat and play off in a sort of playoff round for the last 16. So it's not quite a last 32, but you get where I'm. So they'll decide who's the last of the last 16. The last 8 clubs to go in that, and that's also happens with the Europa League. So the teams that finish third will play against the teams that finish second for the Conference League last 16. So even if the Conference League's a kind of trophy that we would win. But you don't want to be in it because it's definitely the Diddy League.
It's the Mickey Mouse Cup, of which people used to say about the UEFA Cup, because when we got that, it was just a Mickey Mouse run he's done. So
I think the Europa League's a great tournament, if I'm honest. I think it's definitely your level. I think it's more enjoyable. I think you go into every game with the expectation of having a good result, so to speak. Even
more enjoyable than the Champions League, because I think the Champions League, with all the riches that come with it, it's becoming very repetitive.
You just look at the money and the numbers that are getting thrown about with teams that are in the Champions League. Like Chelsea have just spent something like 200 odd million on 5 players. It's absolutely mental. Don't get me wrong, they will claw a lot of that money back, and they did with Hazard last year. Obviously, they sold him for a shitload and never spent anything because they had the ban. So most of that money's been, sitting there waiting to be spent. So I think the Champions League, the fun of the Champions League for me stops when the music stops and the game kicks off,
because you're onto a hiding.
It's horrific, man. That last time with PSG and stuff, it was I was near tears. My oldest son was in tears after the 7-1. To be honest, he was in tears at 5-0 at Celtic Park and all. It's just ridiculous. But it's just a different sport, isn't it?
It's a totally it's out of orbit. It really is, with the riches that come with it. Now, There's something that just doesn't sit right with me that PSG, who are owned by the Qatari royal family, and also Leipzig, who are owned by Red Bull, got to the semi-finals of the Champions League. Something just didn't sit right with me that, because both those teams, without any of that backing, maybe got a run here or there, but they wouldn't be.
To be fair about Leipzig, they're running themselves quite similar to the Ajax, Benfica's, Porto's. They're buying young talent, relatively cheap and, in Champions League terms, 10 to 15 million, and punting for 50 and 60 million. So, they're probably going about it in a way that's better. I think that also the Red Bull things put all the infrastructure in place, but they're not actually throwing money at it. They're actually self-sufficient now, so to speak.
Yeah, so. I suppose. So, but at the same time, though, I think it's just they would never have been there. I mean, there were hardly anything before Red Bull brought them in, and Red Bull are just taking over like Salzburg and New York Red Bulls, and just throws up a lot of connotations. Where I think there was some problem when Salzburg and Leipzig potentially. Well, it was in the same group, wasn't it? Actually, we had, because it was Salzburg and Leipzig we had, remember? So
aye, that's right.
I think somebody said there was going to be problems or something when it happened, So
I think they've dropped Red Bull from their name.
Aye, that's what it was. They had to.
And I don't know if they're actually owned by Red Bull anymore, if I'm honest. So I think that's why it was allowed. I just remember when the draw was made. You remember you've seen that GIF of the two Spider-Men pointing at each other.
It was him.
It's just the two of the same pointing at each other. I'm going to move on to some questions. So I've got one for Ali Jack. He's been a long time fan of any of my podcasts that I've ever been on. He's a fan of Celtic podcasts altogether. He's at Carol Compton Fans. So his question is, if I just go back to it, would you use Ayer to get Benkovic back to Celtic if you get 10 to 15 million for Ayer on top? What do you think of that?
Interesting question to start with.
Benkovic ended up at Bristol City or something, didn't he, on loan?
And I don't know if he's just at Leicester now, just warming up the bench, or potentially going to be warming up the bench. I
liked Benkovic, but I think when he got injured and then it was clear that he wasn't going to be staying, that's when didn't play him for the remainder of that season. He stuck with Simunovic, obviously, because Simunovic was a Celtic signed player. If he can stay fit, I think Benkovic would be a great signing. Ayer, I think out of all the players, the big name players that Celtic have been linked with getting rid of, I think Ayer is the one that I think Celtic could cope with. But obviously, some of that money would definitely have to go back into replacing. We would definitely need to replace him.
Exactly, and I just don't think it was going to happen. That's just my biggest fear.
And I just wonder if some of that money would go towards Aberdeen and McKenna. Because the argument will be he's a Scottish international, he knows the league, he's rough, he's got quite a bit of development to go, because he's only 22 or 23 max, I think, McKenna. I mean, he is quick, he's aggressive, he could be worked on. I think McKenna is a decent, and when you look at some of the money we've wasted in the 2 to 3 million mark, try to buying 2 and 3 people for the same position and none of them working, I think sometimes you just have to look at home and take a chance. So good question, Ali Jack. But
I still would prefer Benkovic if it was a choice between Benkovic or McKenna. You know what you're getting with Benkovic: a tall, commanding centre half and knows how to defend. And I think that's what we need. And I think we keep saying it, and you'll hear it on many. We're sick of projects, and McKenna would be treated as a project to me. And why can't it just be that there's Benkovic, there's, I don't know, whatever it would cost, £7-8 million, and you know what you're getting. Okay,
would Leicester make a loss on him because they bought him for about 12 or 13? I think.
I think clubs are happy to take a hit these days, especially in that league, because money flying around in that league is frightening.
I think it's a very lazy league for scouting and sort of doing the due diligence. It's different for the big six. They can go and cherry pick the best players for most most teams, most second tier teams, if you want to call them,
Mm-hmm.
you know, throughout Europe. So a Bayer Leverkusen or a Leipzig, you know, they're not the biggest clubs in the leagues, but you know, they're there for the pickings, so to speak.
Aye, exactly. But I think it's just
A lot of the middle range clubs the same players just seem to wash around the league, you know, getting picked up for 40, 50, 60 grand a week, and they're no great shakes, to be fair.
they're like a wee kid getting birthday money for the first time. They just want to go, oh my god, there's money, I'm going to spend it on that player, and they don't even know what they're going to get.
I've always had this sort of viewpoint that the Premier League, when they secure these big TV deals, that the clubs are actually told, you need to spend this. You know, this is what drives the league effectively, is the glamour of the big signings, and you know, the fact that Bournemouth could spend £24 million on a Colombian midfielder. You know, it's nuts. Bournemouth, their turnover without TV money is less than £24 million. You know, it's crazy.
It's weird looking at Bournemouth when they were in the Premier League and they had an 11,000 seater stadium.
Yeah,
and that it's just weird, you know what I mean?
At least
it's terrible going
been
to
replaced with a couple of proper clubs, to be fair. So,
Aye.
next question from Franco Boy at Franco Boy 1972. Going by that year, you're a 48.
We're older than me, Frank.
Aye. So he definitely remembers the 90s. So he's wrote.
He's on, get him on.
He's wrote, loving the podcast, mate. So thanks for that. I'm probably a total panty wetter, but I'm now convinced that Ncham and Dyer will be sold, maybe even Edward, purely because I can't recall a time when this board didn't make a profit in player trading. In saying that, and contradicting myself here, I think Ncham and Dyer should be sold if it's true they are trying to work their ticket. But first of all, when I replied to Franco Boy and I said, I hate that term, panty wetter. It really grips my shit whenever I see it. It's always maybe a player's been getting a bit of abuse for a bit. He's not been playing well, and then they score, and then you'll see somebody tweet saying, all the panty wetters, you know, moaning about X player, and you're like, fuck off. I can't stand that. So he's saying he thinks Ayer and Cham are working their ticket and should be sold. What do you think?
Well, Sham's been here for 3 years.
Yeah.
And personally, he's not been getting the game time. So see if he's trying to injure in a booth, then fair play to him, because he's not getting the game time, and that's what players want. They want game time. Now, I get that he might be inconsistent, but he's not getting the chance to prove that he can be consistent.
Not in his right position anyway.
And not in his right position, because he's just getting played out of position, and then he's going to be put out of the team when a Lennon favourite comes back into it, Brown or McGregor or whoever, you know. And
I don't have any inside track, but just for what you hear and listen to other people and people that might know a bit more than me, or a lot more than me probably. I think Ayer is the one out of the three. I think is what, because his agent's been, you know, talking. I think he spoke a while back about, you know, going to another league or a bigger league or whatever. And I think Ayer, out of the three that he's mentioned, is the most likely to leave. I don't think Eddie will be sold this summer now. I don't think he will be. The board will always try and. I think the board will always try and make a net profit on transfers in a summer. Now, if that means that we sell Ayer for 20 million plus and we've spent 20 million, I don't have an issue with that, as long as we've improved the squad. And right now, despite the result against Ferencvaros, most of the players we've brought in are first team ready. You know, some of them are actually first team starters. The goalkeeper, Ayeti. You know, Turnbull's first team ready. He's just going to need to bide his time to get his chance, but I'm sure he'll slot right in right away because he knows the league and he knows the expectations.
And Lennon seems to be a big fan of Turnbull as well, which I think helps your chances in a Lennon lineup.
Yeah.
I think with Ayer, you know, Ayer was always going to move on. He was always going to be one of them that would move on, almost like a Stuart Armstrong. You know, he kind of engineer the move, but not want to give too much away at the same time, and thinks the grass is greener somewhere else. And if that's what he thinks, then fair play to him. He can go, but would he be? I just don't think if he was sold in this transfer window, would he be replaced with someone else? I just don't know if we would. I mean, I'd like to think we would, but with this board, you just don't know. I think it's just balance sheet, profit, what can we do, and get a bonus for Mr. Law.
Yeah. Well, time will tell, I think. But I think if, like I said earlier, I think if we're going to sell any of them, I think it'll be Aya. It's just I think if we can get good money for him, I think he's the one that's most likely to
I certainly
want
think
to
he's
leave.
the front runner. I think he's the front runner to leave out the three of them, because Sham doesn't look too enamoured at the moment. He's not been making, mountains out of molehills,
I think there's going to be a realisation in this. I posed this last week as well in regards to Lennon. And this isn't me saying I don't think Lennon's the right man for the job, but what I was saying, that players who are not Scottish, or don't have any affiliation with Celtic, come to our club and our league in the prospect of playing for Celtic, fighting for titles and championships and trophies and whatever you want to call it, playing in Europe, showcasing yourself, to a wider audience, and playing on TV most weeks next door to the biggest transfer market in the world, as in the English Premier League. So when we're signing these guys, we're basically saying to them, these things, come to us, this is what we can offer you, we'll put you on a pedestal, to showcase what you can do, and the chances are you're going to end up down south within a couple of years. And so don't sell the club on that basis and then get all arsey when these players turn around and say, I've done 2/3 years, I want to leave now.
Nah.
10 might be important to us, 10 might be important to Neil Lennon, but I don't necessarily think 10's that important to these players. And if they're going to be here, it'll be important because it'll be a good thing to have on their CV that they were part of history. But if double the wages is on offer, at a relatively big club in a much bigger league, then they're going to take it. And I said this weeks ago, I don't have heroes anymore really for Celtic.
No.
I have great memories and great moments, and there's players I love to see on the park, but I don't get too upset when they leave because we live in a time now where Celtic just can't afford to keep a hold of guys like Kieran Tierney, or Moussa Dembele.
It's just a case of, and it's back to the old saying, money talks and the bullshit walks with it. Nobody cares about 10 in a row. The fans,
it's good for us to get one up on Rangers, but
it's just a case of one-upmanship, basically. Of course I want it to happen. By the way, I'm not saying that I don't. So just in case anybody's ready to go down my throat, I do want it to happen.
Next question from Chris Harris. This is all the way from Dubai, United Arab Emirates. He's, for all I know, he's tweeting for fucking Kirkcaldy, but he's just put in his profile Dubai.
CSC as well.
At Harris_CCCC. So his question, I don't know what that means, to be honest. He's just wrote, "Hi Stephen, a question for this week's pod. With the signing of Duffy, does that remove the argument regarding Scott Brown's role within the team? We all know that Scott Brown brings more onto the park than just his footballing skills, and with his current form suffering, does the Duffy signing allow us to bring in Ncham, and with Duffy on the park, we don't lose the influence that Brown has on the team? Cheers, Chris." I think what he's basically saying is Duffy's a leader of men. Obviously, he captained the Republic last night and scored.
Cracking header, to be fair.
Yeah, I think so. But I guess what he's saying is people see Brown's influence on the park. This guy who shouts, he motivates, and he's getting other guys run about him, up for the fight, so to speak. Does that mean, that because we've now got somebody else of that ilk in the team, a shouter, an organiser, a motivator, that Brown can drop out without much sort of disruption to the team? Do you buy that?
I wouldn't say that that's what I would buy. I would buy into that. Even if Duffy wasn't there, there is the potential that you could be saying to Brown, we're going to drop you, because I think, based on what you were saying last week, there's a leader on that part beside Brown, and it's McGregor.
It's just a different type of leader.
Just a different type of leader, and it doesn't need to be somebody shouting and up at them and let's get fired right into them for the first minute go. I agree that Duffy is a good signing and we needed him, but I'm not buying into the whole Brown's a replacement. Duffy's a replacement for Brown. Duffy's been brought in because we need someone in the defence to help Ayer and Julian.
Yeah.
So
I think, I mean, I used the comparison, and I wasn't comparing the players last week when I mentioned that, Carlos Puyol is our Scott Brown's our equivalent, and Xavi's our, Callum McGregor's our Xavi type player, as in just the way their character and the way they go about their business. I think if you were to put it in Celtic DA context, you would say that Scott Brown is more Roy Aitken in regards to leader of men, put his head in where it hurts, whereas Paul McStay was more, Cal McGregor's more Paul McStay.
Exactly. Aye.
There's a famous game that Celtic played at Ibrox when we won 2-1 in the centenary year, which was basically the game that Celtic, pretty much assured that they were going to win the league. McStay scores an absolute wonder volley into the bottom corner, and then just after it, after that goal, he picks the ball up deep in his own half and he absolutely drives at the Rangers defence. And the commentator, Jock Brown, at the time in the commentary, he actually says Paul McStay's just gripped this game by the scruff of the neck. And for me, that's what McGregor did last week. He just had enough of what was going on and just grabbed the ball and just burst past people and made shit happen in a different way. And I think that's showing leadership qualities. That's just taking responsibility and carrying the team on your shoulders.
It's just a different way.
It's just a different way of doing it. And
I mean, I get his point, and I think there's something to be said for having a leader of men, and I think Shane Duffy is that, and I think he certainly proved that last night against Bulgaria. But that's not to say that he comes in and be captain, So that's kind of what I'm taking from that, and I believe that there's the leader there, and it's going to be McGregor. And I still think even without Duffy, you could easily drop Brown.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Brown, the next question's about Scott Brown, and it's came from Barry Gill, at Barry Gill 74 on Twitter. So he's wrote, when do you think Brown will be phased out of the team, if at all?
At the moment, I don't think he will be phased out of the team, because I think he is a Lennon favourite. I do think, though, this will be his last season, should it all go the way that we all want it to go. That's what I think.
Well,
I would like him to be phased out. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but I just can't see him being dropped, because what we'll do is we'll hype ourselves up saying it'd be good to have a change, it'd be good to maybe drop him, but we know it's going to be Brown every time on that lineup that comes out on Twitter at 1:45 every Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah. Well, personally, I think it's going to take a performance that he had against Rangers back at the end of the year, 2019. Where he was really piss poor. I think if he has a similar performance against Rangers, obviously I hope he don't, because I want to win the game, but I think if he puts in that type of performance against a pretty steady Rangers midfield, I think that's where it could happen. Where if we start to lose the battle against our biggest rivals. So I can't see him getting dropped anytime soon.
No, he's not going to be dropped, and it's a shame, because I think, as we've spoke about every time we've been on the podcast, and we don't, and you said it, and we don't want it to be a Brown bashing podcast. We don't want it to be that, but
he deserves a better exit.
Exactly, he deserves to go out with his head held high, because he stayed at Celtic for the majority of his career, if not his whole career, you could say, and he had the chance to go to Newcastle, and he had the chance to go to Australia, maybe make himself a few bucks, and he hasn't done it. And he will go down as a great player and a great servant, but you need to put the team first.
Yeah.
And I just don't. I think just Brown, Len is just playing a wee bit in loyalty, thinking, oh well, I've got to play him, because he's been. No, you've got to look at the bigger picture.
When Alex Ferguson get rid of Roy Keane, everybody thought, fucking hell, man, he's get rid of Roy Keane.
Aye.
And he came to Celtic, and within 6 months, he's done.
Aye.
And for me, I think if Scott Brown was to leave Celtic at the end of this season, I don't even know if he would finish the season wherever he went. I
honestly think if he would retire after this, because there is nothing else for him to. There's
nothing else to prove.
There's nothing else to prove. He's done it. He's done it at the highest level. He's played in Champions League. He's played in international football. He's played against England. He's won every possible trophy. He's became captain of Celtic. What more is there to prove? And I would say if he got with his head held high, he wants to go into management, then perfect opportunity, I say.
On to the last question. Comes from Martin Wilmot at Wilmot 68 has his having a wee go at the SFA. So he's wrote, question for you, Stevie. SFA give Bolly and the Aberdeen 8 completely different punishments for their COVID indiscretions. Why does Celtic stay silent on this? Cheers, Martin. I get what he's saying, but I think what Bolingoli did merited a bigger punishment for me. And the sheer fact that he lied to the manager and the club, and he went to a country that was effectively banned. Not banned, but you had to quarantine under the quarantine rules. The fact that he's come back for that country, and just, I know he tested negative, but that's besides the point. The fact is he went onto a park, having just come back for that country. I think Celtic were quite happy with the punishment, to be honest, because I think they were looking to cut their losses with him, and I think that just adds the weight to getting rid of him. It's the principle
as well. It's the principle. Okay, the Aberdeen players or the Aberdeen 8, as if there's some gang that robbed a bank, you know what I mean? But they were stupid, but
the Aberdeen 8 were stupid. But there was a player, I think it was Ricky Foster, made a point on BBC Radio Scotland when he was talking to Jason Leach. Mm-hmm. Ricky, it was a fucking weird conversation, but he said something that made me think. So it was something I was actually thinking that the Aberdeen players thought, and that was that they were already part of a bubble.
Oh, I remember hearing.
They were part of what they call a sporting bubble, and they felt that because they were still within that sporting bubble, that bubble went wherever they went, so to speak. So as long as it was only players within that group that went out. But obviously Jason Leach basically said to them, well, that bubble only counts the minute you cross the white line. It's not a bubble. As soon as you cross the white line to train or go into a football pitch, that's where it becomes a bubble and that's your space. Once you leave that, then you're back in normal society rules effectively. And he just couldn't get his head around it. He just couldn't get it. And I was thinking, I bet that's what the Aberdeen players thought. They thought, we're already in a bubble. We're getting tested twice a week. We'll be fine. No, it's weird that they went to a pub in Aberdeen, got COVID, and Bolingoli went to meet some skank in Malaga and came back with, well, I don't know if he came back with something, but he didn't come back with COVID, that's for sure.
They may have made a trip to Sandyford, but that way about that. The thing is as well, Celtic are probably still conducting an investigation into that, so like an internal investigation.
Aye, the internal investigation basically is phoning around every club and agent in Europe and saying, do you want to buy this guy?
And somehow we've got in touch with Rome and said, look, you kind of owe us a favour.
We notice you've just got rid of Kolarov. We've got this guy Bolingoli, by the way, mate. So, well, that's it for questions. Obviously made the Shane Duffy signing. I thought it's an excellent piece of business. I think, I don't know a lot about the guy. I don't tend to watch a lot of Brighton games, but the fact he's played over 100 times in the Premier League and I think 200 times for Brighton, I think is, and obviously he captained Ireland. I did see a couple of iffy moments for him last night, but then obviously he came up with the equaliser right at the death. So,
he did cause a goal last night though. I think it could be fit. And when I was watching it in the pub, I'm just going, oh Jesus, here we go, because people are just going to leap right on that. But he redeemed himself, a great header, and he didn't, worry about a celebration. He just thought, let's get on with it, and that was good to see, and I quite appreciate that quality in a player. A wee bit his interview after the game, he was basically saying, he was actually disappointed with the result and in the way they played and stuff like that. So he wasn't sort of, taking all the acclaim, the glam, the acclaim for the goal. I think he probably recognised that he could have had a better performance overall, but obviously he's rescued the team at the death. So I mean, there was a couple of good times where he just did what a defender has to do sometimes and just clear it, you know. And I think to get him at 28-year-old with, I think there is a view to, and I could be wrong, but there's a view to maybe a permanent move at the end of the season. Allegedly. So a defender in his prime, you would say. I thought Celtic had a very sneaky way of announcing it through the here's the Celts that are on international duty, and at the very bottom here's Duffy. I just would have preferred if it was actually just, here we go, we've got him in, instead of this sneaky way. But that's just a personal opinion. in the last season, he's won, out of all the duels that he was part of, aerial or just, on the ground, he's won 80% of them. So that's a very good stat to have as a defender. And I just think exactly what we need in that defence, just to be beside Aaron Julian maybe as a 3, and just he'll be the one just when the ball needs kicked out or just defended properly. It will just be get it to.
I hope he's more than that, but it is something we need, I suppose.
I think like he hasn't been at Brighton and captain in the Republic of Ireland just because he's of that. There will be certain parts to it. I just think he's more limited in that respect. He'll not just go up and take a mad dribble or anything like or a mad gallop like Ayer. But the other thing that annoys me, it just took forever to get the deal over the line again.
Yeah.
We just never seem to do things bloody quick.
Well, I think the Brighton owner is a guy who made his fortune in the sort of gambling world, and I think he's a very tough negotiator, and I don't think he gives things away easily. So I think it was maybe more the club, were looking for quite a high fee on a loan, and Celtic were playing hardball, and when you get Lawwell and another guy tight with his money in a room, it's not going to be done and dusted in a day, that's for sure.
These Brexit talks would go quicker than that, I think.
Well, I was just going to say, that's us been on just about an hour and a half now, and we're out of questions, so I think we'll maybe wrap it up for this week. I think we're pretty much covered, haven't we?
I think the only thing that I was saying, my mate Martin asked us to debate quickly if we could, though.
Go. I remember you saying. He
said this, so just to put it in there, he did say, what do you think is the better goal, Maloney against Rangers in 06 or Nakamura against Rangers in 08? And for me, it's an easy winner. It's got to be Nakamura's.
It's Nakamura's.
It's Nakamura's all day long. I just think...
I'm assuming he thinks Maloney.
He thinks Maloney, yeah.
Your mate's talking shite.
Well, I can't wait for him to hear that bit, because I told him right away, I says, I think you're going to know the answer to this, and it was just... I says, all right, I'll try and see what I can do. But I mean, with everything riding on that game and the way that Nakamura just catches the ball and whacks it, and it's got to be, that's just a superb goal, the way he hits that.
It's a more iconic goal because you don't see goals scored like that, the way it's swerved. And I think just the whole magnitude of that game, the other one was a League Cup.
That game, big time or else we were out of it, and the way, Maloney, the way the Maloney one, he kind of takes it, and you've seen goals like that 100 times, but you don't see many goals the way that Nakamura got a touch to it, didn't bring it down greatly, but got enough on it and just thought whack, and did the.
Well, he took it well. Actually, took it on the studs and knocked it forward, and then cracked it first time. I think it's an unbelievable goal. I remember at the time in the stadium watching it. It was just.
It's the swerve
that's one of my favourite. That's one of my favourite Celtic Rangers games that night. That was pretty tense stuff, man. But. And the way we won it right at the death, I think we'll revisit stuff like that. I think if MD's got maybe 2 goals they want to compare and have us argue it, it doesn't really work when we both agree.
No, I don't. But that one, I knew we were both going to agree on that one. But I think there'll be ones that we'll certainly disagree on. But that night was fantastic. I always remember saying to my dad, "Oh, we'll get the winner," even after McDonald pretty much passed the ball to McGregor in a penalty that night, even with a broken ankle.
I know.
But anyway. But I'm sure he'll be happy to know that we both disagree with him.
We both think he's talking shite. I'll say it.
You can say that. I'll not say it to him.
Just don't tell him where I live. Right. Well, thanks for joining us again this week, and hopefully people give it a listen, and any points they want to make, or leave any reviews on. I think it's called Apple Pod now instead of iTunes. So. And it'll be up on all the platforms as usual. So I don't know if we'll be on next week unless some major signings happen. Obviously, well, I suppose we will be back on because we've got to preview the next game.
The Ross County game. So
I just don't know if it'll be an hour and a half long. That's the only thing.
No, we'll just moan about the fact you have to pay £15 to watch the Ross County game. So
oh god, don't start me on that. We'll leave that for next week.
No worries.
On that note, appreciate your time. Catch you soon.
Mate. Bye bye.
And they gave us James McRory and Paul McStay. They gave us Johnston, Tully, Murdoch, Gold and Hay. And most of the football greats have passed through Parkhead's gates. But to play football, the Glasgow Glasgow